The sun was already dipping behind the hills when Maggie tapped the last fence post into the dry ground. Her shoulders ached. Her palms were torn up again. The dirt clung to her sweat-soaked shirt, and her braid had mostly come undone, long brown strands falling over her tired face. She leaned on the hammer, breathing through her teeth. Down the slope, the cabin sat quiet, smoke barely curling from the chimney. Her father hadn't come out all day. He hadn't come out yesterday, either. Maggie didn't like to think about how quickly he'd gone downhill. A year ago, he was still riding fence lines, helping neighbors pull calves, eating too much bacon in the morning. Now he barely got out of bed. The medicine didn't help much. The doctor from town said it was just age and bad luck, and there wasn't much else to be done but wait. Maggie had waited long enough. The animals needed feeding. The place needed mending. Her hands weren't enough. But she didn't trust people. Not anymore. Not after everything. Not after her brothers left when Ma died. And not after that winter when a neighbor tried to take the land, claiming her father wasn't in his right mind. She'd fought them off, legally, and when that didn't work, with a shotgun in her lap and a dog at her heel. She'd held it all together, but just barely. Now it was summer again, dry and hard, and she'd reached her limit. She needed help. Not a man looking for land. Not a cousin hoping to borrow money. Just someone quiet, someone strong, someone who didn't ask questions. She'd posted a notice in town, work for room and board. Ranch labor. No questions, no nonsense. She didn't expect much. But that evening, a man rode in. Skinny, sunburned, dark hair hanging in his face. His horse was leaner than it should have been, but well-mannered. He said his name was Levi, and he didn't say much else. She watched him hitch the horse like he'd done it 1,000 times, then stand there with his hat in his hand, waiting. "You know how to mend wire?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." "Know how to keep your mouth shut?" He nodded. That was enough for her. She gave him the loft above the tack room and a plate of stew that night. He ate like he hadn't seen food in days, but never looked her in the eye. She didn't press him. Folks came from all kinds of places, most of them running from something. If he worked, that was all she cared about. The next morning, he was up before her, already shoveling manure from the stalls. She watched from the window, arms crossed, coffee in her hand. He worked steady, not fast, but he didn't stop. There was something quiet about the way he moved, like he didn't want to disturb the air around him. She'd seen wild animals move like that, cautious, half expecting a trap. Maggie didn't say much to him that week. She told him what needed doing, and he did it. He was always polite, always distant. But after a few days, her father started to notice. "Who's that out there?" he asked from bed, his voice rough like gravel. "Just help," Maggie said, adjusting his blankets. He's got that look, like he's seen something. Maggie glanced at her father. His mind wandered, but he still saw things sharp. She didn't answer. Didn't need to. The ranch started running smoother. The roof leak got patched. The goats stopped breaking through the fence. The garden didn't wilt for once. Levi didn't ask for anything, didn't take extra. He just worked. But sometimes, when he thought nobody was watching, he'd freeze. Maggie caught him staring at the hills once, shoulders tight, like he was expecting something to come riding over. She didn't ask. She recognized it too well. That waiting for bad news look. She'd worn herself. 2 weeks in, she came back from town and found her father out on the porch for the first time in months. He sat in the old rocking chair, Levi next to him, both of them silent, looking at the chickens scratching in the dirt. She didn't say anything, just went back to unloading supplies. But later that night, her father mentioned something. "He's got good hands," he said. "Gentle. Don't flinch, easy. You might keep him around, Maggie. Might do you some good." She wanted to laugh at that. Do her good? She hadn't thought about herself in a long time. She had no room for feelings, for softness. But her father was right. The house didn't feel as heavy since Levi came. It was late one night when she finally asked him. They were both in the barn, thunder rumbling in the distance, tying up loose tarp so the grain wouldn't get wet. "You running from something?" she asked, knotting rope. He paused. Not long, but enough. "Yes, ma'am." "What was it?" He pulled the rope tighter. Not something I can fix. She left it there. Weeks passed. Her father started walking again, slow and shaky, but walking. Levi fixed the well pump without being told. Maggie started sleeping a little easier. The nightmares came less often. But peace doesn't last long in places like that. Not when you've built it out of broken pieces. It was near sundown when trouble came. A rider coming fast, kicking up dust down the trail. Levi saw him first and stiffened. Maggie stepped out on the porch, shotgun behind the door, heart already pounding. The man on the horse pulled up short, face half hidden under his hat. "You got a man here?" "Dark hair, rides a dun horse." Levi stepped out from the barn, hands empty but steady. The man straightened in the saddle. "Thought so," he said. Maggie saw Levi's jaw tighten. She moved without thinking, stepping between them. "You got business here?" she asked. "Just a question," the man said. "That man left a dead man back in Ulrich. You still want him sleeping on your land?" Levi didn't flinch. Maggie didn't move. "You got proof?" "No, ma'am. Just a name. And a sister who's still crying." Silence settled over the yard. The wind picked up. Chickens fluttered in the dust. Maggie turned her head. "You kill him." Levi stared at the man, then looked at her. He had his hands on a girl. She said no. He didn't stop. Maggie felt her breath catch. She didn't ask more. Didn't need to. She remembered her own fists pounding on a locked door, remembered nobody listening. Her father coughed behind her, weakly. She looked at the man. "There's no law out here but what I say." "He stays." The rider spat in the dirt. "You'll regret it." "Maybe." But the man didn't push it. He turned and rode out, the dust cloud trailing behind him long after he was gone. That night, Maggie brought an extra blanket to the tack room. She didn't say anything, just left it there. Levi didn't thank her, just nodded. And in the weeks that followed, he didn't freeze so much when the wind shifted. He started humming sometimes while he worked. Her father laughed more. The chickens laid steady. And for the first time in a long time, the ranch felt alive again, like something was healing. Maggie still didn't ask questions. But sometimes, when Levi sat with her father in the evening light, she let herself believe that maybe not all broken things stay broken. Maggie knew how to read the land like scripture. Every trail, every dip in the pasture, every tree twisted by wind. But people were different. They were harder to predict and harder still to trust. She learned that the day her oldest brother left without a word and never came back, leaving her to nurse their mother until the end, and then shoulder a ranch built for 5 with just her and her father. He was a quiet man, but he'd always been her anchor. Now, even he was drifting, his memory sometimes skipping like a stone, his voice losing its edge, his steps getting slower. Levi was different from the men Maggie had known. He never looked at her like he was waiting for something. He didn't fill the air with talk to prove himself. He listened, really listened. Sometimes she'd catch him watching the sky, his jaw tight, like he was remembering something he didn't want to. But he never said what it was. She hadn't pushed. Not yet. Still, the rhythm of the place was changing. The garden stayed weeded. The animals were calmer. Her father started asking for Levi when he had a question, not her. And Maggie, for the first time in years, wasn't falling into bed too tired to think. She even caught herself smiling now and then. It scared her more than anything. One afternoon, as they worked on digging a trench for a water line, Levi finally broke the silence. "You ever think about leaving this place?" Maggie didn't answer right away. She drove the shovel in, leaned on it. "Once. Years ago." "What stopped you?" "My father. This land. I don't know. Maybe fear." Levi nodded. "It gets hard to know where you'd even go. You got someone waiting?" He hesitated. "I had a sister. Molly. She died when I was 14. "What happened?" He dug his shovel into the earth and said, without looking at her, "Same kind of man I ran from." Maggie didn't ask more. She didn't need to. It said enough about why Levi watched the horizon like it owed him something. That night, she sat longer on the porch after dinner, boots off, letting the wind pull at her braid. She thought about Molly and about how many girls like her didn't get a second chance. How maybe this place could be something more than a weight tied around her neck. Maybe it was a second chance, too. A few days later, a buggy came rattling up the hill from town, a cloud of dust trailing behind. Maggie came down from the barn loft, wiping her hands. The woman who stepped out was sharp in the eyes and carried herself like a judge, hat cocked just so, skirt neatly pressed. It was Evelyn Pratt, the banker's daughter, now working as the county nurse and always armed with a ledger of complaints. "Maggie," she said, voice clipped, "word's been going around town that you hired a stranger off the road." "I hired someone to help me keep the place from falling apart," Maggie said flatly. "You know what people are saying? I don't care." "Well, you should, especially with your father the way he is. What if he's not what he seems?" Levi stepped out from the barn just then, wiping his hands with a rag. Evelyn's eyes snapped toward him. "This him?" Maggie stepped in front of him slightly. "His name's Levi, and he works harder than any man who's passed through this place." "Maybe so," Evelyn said, mouth pinched. "But hard work doesn't clean a name." Maggie narrowed her eyes. "You came up here to talk gossip, or is there something else?" Evelyn sniffed. "Sheriff's been asking questions. Just letting you know. Be careful who you keep under your roof." She turned and left, dust curling behind her buggy like smoke. Levi didn't say anything, just went back to work. Maggie stood there watching the trail long after Evelyn disappeared. Something in her chest ached. Not quite fear, but something close. That night, Maggie found her father sitting in the kitchen, awake for once past supper. He looked better, stronger. There was a clarity in his eyes she hadn't seen in weeks. "She came to warn you, didn't she?" he asked. Maggie nodded. Town's full of whispers. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You trust him?" She thought about it. Really thought about it. "Yes." Her father studied her, then gave a slow nod. "Then I do too." The next week brought rain, a good hard pour that soaked the earth and sent the chickens into a frenzy. Maggie and Levi worked shoulder to shoulder patching the roof where the water started seeping through again. Afterward, they sat under the lean-to, soaked to the bone, sharing a piece of cornbread. Maggie finally said, "You know you can leave if you want, if it gets too dangerous." Levi looked at her, rain dripping from his lashes. "I don't want to leave." She didn't answer, just handed him the rest of the bread. The quiet understanding between them began to shift. A look would last longer. A pause would stretch, filled with words unsaid. He started noticing things about her. The way she rubbed the scar on her wrist when she was worried. The way she always hummed under her breath when walking through the barn. She noticed how he never let his back face a door. How he always counted steps without realizing it. And then came Walker Gentry. He rode in with a silver star pinned to his vest and a face weathered like bad leather. Sheriff of 2 counties over, known for his quick trigger and shorter temper. He didn't dismount, just called out from the saddle while Maggie was hauling feed. "I'm looking for Levi Ward." Levi stepped out of the barn, face stone still. Maggie moved closer, arms crossed. "What's the charge?" she asked. Walker raised a brow. "Not your concern. He's a fugitive. That's enough." Levi didn't flinch. "You got a warrant?" Walker smiled like a man who didn't need one. "You think papers make the law out here?" Maggie stepped between them. "He's done nothing wrong since he's been here. He's worked every inch of this land. He's helped my father walk again." Walker's voice dropped, sharp and cold. "He left a man bleeding out in Ulrich. Whether it was justice or not, that ain't up to him. That's my job." Her father came out then, leaning on his cane, face pale but voice strong. "He saved a life, if I'm hearing right. That man in Ulrich, he's done worse and walked free." Walker stared at him, jaw twitching. "That ain't how it works." "No," Maggie said, stepping closer to Levi. "But it should be." Walker didn't say another word. He turned his horse, spit in the dirt, and rode off. That night, Maggie couldn't sleep. She sat by the fire, watching the flames flicker low. Levi came in, quiet as always, and sat across from her. For a while, neither of them said anything. Finally, he spoke. "You didn't have to stand up for me." "I did. I don't know if I can stay," he said. "Even if I want to. They'll keep coming." Maggie looked at him, her voice steady. "Then we'll keep standing." And in the hush that followed, something settled between them. Not romance. Not yet. But something deeper, loyalty, respect, a shared hurt that made them understand each other without needing to explain. She saw, in that moment, not just a drifter or a ranch hand. She saw someone who'd been lost so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to belong. And in her eyes, maybe he started to remember. Hope didn't come loud on the ranch. It came in soft steps, in the way the wind changed, in the way people chose to stay, even when it was hard. And Maggie, for the first time in years, let herself believe in something better than just surviving. Summer stretched wide and hot across the valley, the kind of heat that made sweat stick before breakfast and flies swarm anything that moved. The days were long, but Maggie didn't mind. She liked work that kept her mind quiet. What she didn't expect was that the quiet was starting to feel different with Levi around. Not empty, not lonely, just less heavy. The ranch wasn't perfect, but things were better. Her father had started getting up on his own, walking short distances with his cane, even making it out to the barn some mornings to talk to Levi about feed or fencing. She caught them talking about cows and wild dogs, but also about Levi's hometown, someplace near the border with dust roads and red rocks. Levi didn't speak much about it, but her father had a way of asking that didn't push too hard. Levi had taken his sleeping in the hayloft, even though Maggie told him the spare cot inside was open. He always smiled politely, said he preferred being close to the horses. She let him, but sometimes when she sat by the fire after dinner and caught him glancing through the kitchen window, she knew he wasn't there just for the animals. And she didn't mind. One evening, after patching a wind-battered fence near the far boundary, Maggie handed Levi a cup of water and leaned against the fence post beside him. The sky was streaked with orange and gold, the sun sinking low. "You ever think about what you'd do if you didn't have to run?" she asked. Levi stared into the distance. "Don't know. Never got to picture it. Most days, it's just about keeping my head down." "You're good at this," she said. "The ranch. Animals. Quiet living. I wasn't always." He looked down, turning the tin cup in his hands. "I learned because I had to. After Molly, there wasn't much else to hold on to. Just kept moving." Maggie swallowed hard. "You ever blame yourself?" "All the time." She nodded slowly. "Me too." He looked over at her, surprised. She didn't elaborate. Just let the silence stretch between them like a bridge built on shared sorrow. Then she pushed off the post, brushing dirt from her hands. "We've got a harvest to pull next week. You stay on through fall. I'll give you a share. You trust me with that. You've earned it." And maybe that was the first real step, trust. Not spoken in so many words, but planted like a seed in dry soil. A few days later, they drove the wagon into town together to pick up supplies. It was the first time Levi had gone back since the sheriff's visit, and Maggie could see the tension in his shoulders the moment they passed the first wooden signs. His eyes scanned everything. People, doorways, the sheriff's office. "No one's looking," Maggie murmured, hands steady on the reins. "They don't have to be," he muttered. "It's the ones who stop talking that worry me." Still, they walked into the general store like any two ranch folk. Maggie gathered tools and flour. Levi loaded salt blocks and cornmeal. She caught sight of Evelyn in the corner, eyeing them with sharp suspicion. Levi kept his head down, shoulders tight. Maggie stood straighter beside him, daring Evelyn to say something. She didn't. Back at the ranch, it rained again, brief and hard. The kind that floods dry ground and turns roads to rivers. The storm knocked down a section of the south fence. Maggie and Levi were out in it within minutes, soaked to the skin, pulling the boards back up in the wind. They worked fast, but somewhere between the hammering and the yelling, Maggie slipped on the wet earth and hit the ground hard. Levi was at her side instantly, one hand catching her wrist, the other around her back. "You okay?" she hissed, clutching her ankle. "Twisted it, I think." He helped her up slowly, his arms steady under hers. She tried to wave him off, but he didn't let go. Don't be stubborn, he said gently. They limped back to the barn together, the storm still beating outside. Inside, Levi lowered her onto a bale of hay and knelt, unlacing her boot carefully. "I've had worse," she muttered, but her voice was thin. He looked up at her. "You don't have to be made of iron, you know." Maggie blinked fast. "If I'm not, who will be?" They were close now, close enough that she could smell the rain in his hair, see the faint scar on his jaw, the way his throat bobbed when he swallowed. "I think you've been strong too long," he said. "No one gets through all that alone. Not everyone sticks around to help." "I'm not everyone." She didn't respond, but she didn't look away either. In the following days, the mood on the ranch shifted. Not dramatic, not loud, just small changes. Her father began teaching Levi how to tell the weather by cloud movement, how to patch a leather saddle properly, how to spot snake holes in the brush. They started playing checkers some evenings, quiet laughter drifting from the porch while Maggie cooked. Levi stopped glancing over his shoulder so much. He began to ask Maggie about her mother, about the early years of the ranch. She told him how her mother used to sing while milking cows, how she made Maggie's dresses by hand, even when money was tight, how she died slow, and Maggie had been the one to bathe her and brush her hair and bury her. "I thought after that, I couldn't feel anything anymore," she said one evening, sitting across from Levi as the sky dimmed. "Not sadness, not love. Just wait, carrying it all. You still feel," he said softly. "You just don't let anyone see it." She looked at him for a long time. "And you?" "I feel too much. That's the problem." One morning, they found a newborn calf near the north line, stuck in a ditch and shaking. Maggie knelt in the mud beside it, while Levi worked to free its leg from a root. The calf bleated weakly. Maggie pressed her hand to its wet, cold side. "We'll call her June," she said. "Why June?" She was born into a mess and still fought to breathe. Levi smiled. "Then June it is." They brought her home in a blanket and stayed up half the night feeding her from a bottle. That small, muddy calf became their bond in the weeks that followed. She survived against odds and followed Levi around like a shadow. But just when the world began to feel balanced, the knock came. It was just after dusk. Maggie opened the door and found Walker Gentry standing there again, hat in his hands this time. His face was tired. "Need a word." Levi came to the doorway behind her. Walker looked him over. "I'm not here to arrest you." Levi said nothing. "The man you hurt back in Aldrich, he died last week." Finally, liver gave out, not the knife wound. But his brother's still out there, still loud, still angry. "Folks know you're here." Maggie felt a knot rise in her throat. Walker continued, "You've got two options. Stay and wait for trouble, or move on and maybe dodge it." Levi looked at Maggie, then at the ground. "Trouble's always going to follow me," he said. "Maybe I'm just tired of running." Walker nodded once, slowly. "Then be ready." When the door shut, Maggie sat down heavily at the kitchen table, hands shaking. Levi stood across from her, his jaw set. "I'll leave," he said. "I won't bring more danger to you. Or your father." She looked up, eyes fierce. "You're not the danger. Cowards who call themselves men are. We don't hide from them here. You don't have to fight my ghosts, Maggie." "I'm not fighting for you," she said, rising. "I'm fighting with you." Something shifted again, deeper, unspoken. Levi reached across the table and took her hand. She didn't pull away. Neither of them moved. The next morning, Maggie rode out with her father and Levi to the edge of the property. They repaired a fence together, laughter rising in small bursts as the sun climbed. It felt almost like a family, something whole, something she thought she'd lost forever. But as they packed up the tools, Maggie caught a glint on the horizon, a man on a horse, watching, distant, unmoving. Her heart pounded. Levi turned, followed her gaze. His face hardened. "That's not random," he said. "No," she agreed. "It's starting." And just like that, the quiet days cracked. The peace they built showed its seams. Maggie knew what came next wouldn't be easy. But standing there, shoulder to shoulder with Levi, her father beside them, she didn't feel alone. She felt ready. The rider didn't return that day, nor the next, but Maggie kept seeing shadows where there shouldn't be any. Just the flicker of movement along the ridgeline or the sudden hush of birds. Levi noticed it too. His steps grew quieter. He started checking the rifles in the morning, cleaning and reloading them before chores. He didn't speak much of it. Neither did she. But the quiet between them now carried something heavier than before. Readiness, fear, and something else she didn't want to name yet. The land, once steady and predictable, now felt like it was holding its breath. They still worked. The ranch didn't pause for fear. Fences still broke. Goats still escaped. The newly born calf, June, was thriving, frisky, stubborn, following Levi like a shadow. Her father kept his porch watch in the evenings, a rifle across his knees and a bottle of coffee instead of whiskey beside him. Maggie didn't sleep much anymore. She'd sit up late by the fire, Levi a silent shape on the other side of the room, both of them listening for a hoofbeat that hadn't come yet. It wasn't just danger from the outside, though. That was the part Maggie didn't see coming. The way fear started pushing at her in other ways, quieter ways. It had been easy to keep moving when everything was survival. But now she cared. About the land, yes. But about Levi too. About her father waking up in the morning. About someone riding in and taking it all away. One night, after a long day of rounding up cattle that had broken loose, Levi found her in the barn, sitting on the edge of a feed bucket, holding her head in her hands. "You all right?" he asked. She didn't lift her head. "Just tired." He stepped closer. "Is it your ankle again?" "No, it's everything." Levi sat beside her. He didn't touch her, just sat there, elbows on his knees, staring at the ground. "You're scared," he said quietly. She hated how easily he saw it. "I've lived scared before. That's not new." "No, but caring's new." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. He looked over at her. "I don't want to be the reason something happens to you." "You're not," she said. "The reason's out there, somewhere with a grudge. You just gave them a face. You think that makes it better?" "I think. I've lived with loss. If I lose this too, I'll survive. But I don't want to go through that again if I don't have to." Levi let out a long breath. "Neither do I." That was the thing about emotion. It crept in slow. You could pretend for weeks that it wasn't growing until one moment you realized it had already taken root. Their next setback came with the stock. A cow was found dead in the north pasture, throat torn, legs broken. It wasn't natural. A predator, yes, but not a wolf or a cougar. This was cruel, personal. "I saw tracks," Levi said, kneeling by the carcass. "Horseshoes. One set." Maggie stood beside him, rifle slung across her back. "Someone did this to rattle us." "Well, it's working." That night, they found the barn door hanging open. Nothing taken, just left that way, mocking. The chickens scattered. Maggie didn't sleep at all. She sat in the dark with her shotgun across her lap, watching the door until light filtered in through the windows. Her father watched her over breakfast. "You're not eating." "I'm fine." "You're grinding your teeth in your sleep again." She glanced up. "I hear things," he added. "We're handling it." He leaned forward, his voice soft but steady. "You're not meant to handle everything alone." She hated how much she needed to hear that. Hated even more how true it was. But it didn't stop her. That afternoon, she rode the property line twice. Levi rode the opposite direction. They met near the creek where a narrow bridge crossed over to open grazing land. She saw him first, horse still, eyes narrowed. "What is it?" she asked. He pointed. A small pile of stones. Perfectly stacked. "Not natural." "A mark," he said. "For what?" "Warning. Or promise." She turned in the saddle. "They're circling us. They're waiting to see if we scare easy." Maggie stared at the stones. "We don't." But her voice didn't feel as certain as it should have. Back home, her father had a coughing spell that left blood in his handkerchief. Maggie stood frozen as he wiped it away, pretending it hadn't happened. That night, she sat beside his bed longer than usual. He didn't say much, but she saw the way he held her hand tighter when she finally stood to leave. She stepped out onto the porch, and found Levi waiting there, just standing, watching the road. "Anything?" she asked. "No. Do you think they'll come tonight?" He looked at her. "If they do, we'll be ready." She nodded, but her hands were shaking. Later, after the candles were out and the house was dark, Maggie heard something outside. A scrape, then a thud. She grabbed her gun and was halfway to the door when she saw Levi already there, boots on, eyes sharp. Together, they moved out into the yard. The moon was high, silver and cold. At the barn, the doors were wide open again. This time, one of the chickens lay dead on the steps, its neck wrung. A message. Levi crouched by the body, jaw tight. Same kind of thing I saw before. Threats. Just before they took a torch to the stable. Who? Men I worked for once. They thought I stole from them. I didn't, but they believed it. Didn't matter either way. Maggie felt heat rise in her chest. And now they're here. Maybe. Or someone like them. Word travels fast through the kind of people who think justice is a bullet in a rope. She looked at him, really looked. "You're not afraid of them." "I am," he said, "but I'm more afraid of what I'll do if they touch someone I care about." And there it was, finally said, not hidden behind fences or storms or silence. Just raw truth. The next morning brought no attack, no fire. Just cold, thick tension hanging in the air. They doubled patrols, kept rifles nearby, started locking the doors. Something Maggie had never done before, not once. Still, in the quiet of late afternoon, Maggie caught a moment of stillness. She stood with Levi in the field, brushing down the horses after a long ride. He reached for a brush at the same time she did, their hands grazing. She didn't pull away this time. He looked at her. "I don't know how this ends," he said. "We don't need to know. We just take it day by day." "I don't want to leave," he said, "even if it gets worse." She swallowed hard. Then stay. It was a risk. Saying it, letting him stay. But the truth was he was already rooted in the place, in the land, in her father's slow smile, in June's calf prints in the mud, and in her. But then the next blow came, one they hadn't expected. The well ran dry. They'd drawn from it that morning. By evening, it was sucking up air. Levi pried off the cover and climbed down while Maggie watched from above, hard in her throat. When he came back up, his hands were covered in mud, and his face was tight. "Blocked." "What do you mean?" "Filled with rocks. Someone dumped them down. Recent. Wet mud hasn't settled. It was sabotage. They spent the next 2 days digging it out. The backup cistern only had enough for the animals." Maggie hauled buckets back and forth until her shoulders burned and her vision blurred. Her father tried to help, but couldn't get far before collapsing on the porch steps. By nightfall, they were bone-tired and covered in mud. Maggie sat on the ground beside the well, too exhausted to stand. Levi sat beside her. His hand found hers again. She didn't let go. "We need a plan," she said quietly. "If they come, I'll lead them away." "No," she snapped. "That's not the plan. I can't let you and your father get caught in the crossfire. And I can't lose this place. Or you." He looked at her like he hadn't let himself believe she felt that way. "Maggie, I mean it," she said. "This ranch isn't the only thing that feels like home anymore." She was scared when she said it, but she didn't regret it. And then, as if the world wanted to remind them how fragile peace was, a single shot rang out across the field. It cracked through the night like a whip. They ran, Levi ahead, Maggie close behind. Her father was on the porch, clutching his side, blood soaking through his shirt. "No," Maggie breathed, dropping to her knees beside him. "I'm all right," he gasped. "Grazed." I ducked. Levi scanned the darkness, rifle ready. No rider, just dust and wind. They didn't sleep that night, not even for a moment. The stakes had changed. No more warnings. No more chickens or dead cows. Now it was war. And Maggie knew there would be no more running, no more waiting. Whoever was hunting Levi had just crossed the line. And this time, she was going to meet them at it. The next morning dawned gray. Not the kind of storm gray that brought thunder and wind, but the quiet, oppressive gray that settled deep into the bones. The porch was stained dark with blood where her father had fallen the night before. Maggie had cleaned it in silence, each scrub of the brush tighter, harder, more violent. She didn't stop until her hands were raw. Her father sat inside with a bandage around his ribs, his breathing tight but steady. He kept insisting it was just a graze. The heat had worse during the winter of '72, but Maggie saw the pallor in his skin. He was fading. She didn't say it. She just sat next to him, spooning broth to his lips and pretending the tears in her eyes were from the steam. Levi hadn't said much all morning. He paced the yard before dawn, rifle in hand, boots caked with mud. Every few minutes, he glanced at the tree-lean, jaw locked tight. When Maggie finally stepped outside, wiping her hands on her apron, she found him by the barn, bracing himself against the post. "They're not stopping," he said. "No," she replied. "I should leave." Maggie didn't answer. She looked down at her boots, then up at the hills. "I stayed too long. Made you and your father target. I told you before," she said, "you're not the danger. You're just the excuse they needed." He looked at her then. His eyes weren't hard like before. They were scared. "You don't know what I've done." She stepped closer. "Then tell me." He took a breath, one that seemed to pull everything painful from his chest, and began. The man in Aldridge wasn't the first. There was another before him. The first time I saw someone hit a girl and call it discipline, I was 12. I didn't say anything, just froze. I hated myself for that. That happened again and again. I got used to it, learned to look away, until one day I couldn't anymore. I stopped one of them, hurt him bad, thought I did the right thing. But the men in power didn't see it that way. They called it assault, said I'd attacked without cause, said the girl lied. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. They beat me until I couldn't walk straight, told me to leave town and never come back. So I ran. I kept running. Until Aldridge. Until him. Maggie felt her throat tighten. And what did he do? Levi's eyes darkened. Same thing. I tried to reason with him. He laughed, said it was none of my business. So I made it my business. And now his brother wants revenge. The wind picked up, dry, restless. Maggie took a breath, then stepped in front of him. You did what no one else had the guts to do. You stopped monsters. And if someone wants to come after you for that, they'll have to go through me. His jaw trembled. Why are you still standing beside me? Because I know what it's like to be the one no one listens to. I've lived it. She turned then and walked back toward the house, shoulders stiff. She didn't look back. If she had, she might have seen the way Levi crumpled against the post, fingers digging into the wood like it was the only thing holding him up. That night, she lit the lanterns early and locked the doors. Her father was resting again, his breathing shallow, the wound already beginning to color his side dark blue. Levi sat at the table, staring at the flame in the lamp. Maggie poured coffee into 2 mugs, set one in front of him. I don't think they'll wait much longer, she said. I know. We can't outrun this. No, I'll fight. He looked at her. I believe you. She set the mug down and stepped back, folding her arms. Do you? He looked up confused. Do you believe that I'm not going to break? That I'm not just someone you have to protect? Levi stood. I never thought that. You treat me like glass sometimes. I treat you like someone I care about. Then stop waiting for me to fall apart. I'm not made of the same things you are, Levi. I don't have to keep running to feel safe. He crossed the room. I'm not running. Not anymore. Her voice dropped. Then stay. I will. They stood in silence, so close now that she could feel his breath, smell the dust, and cedar on his clothes. I'm tired of fighting the world alone, she whispered. Levi reached out and brushed his hand against hers. Then don't. For the first time, Maggie let her forehead rest against his chest. He wrapped his arms around her slowly, carefully, like something sacred. It wasn't about romance. Not yet. It was something older. Something carved from pain and silence and shared war. They stayed like that for a long time, both pretending the world outside didn't exist. But it did. At midnight, a noise broke the stillness, a low thud, followed by the crack of wood splitting. Then a shout. Then another. Horses. Multiple. Levi moved fast, pulling Maggie back and checking the windows. She ran to her father's room and shook him awake. "Is it time?" he rasped. "Yes." He sat up slowly, face pale, but there was fire in his eyes. "Help me to the porch." Maggie and Levi each took one side and lifted him, his arm around their shoulders. They got him into his chair on the porch and gave him his rifle. He gripped it like an old soldier called to duty again. 5 riders circled in from the shadows. One in front wore a dark hat pulled low, a bandana around his face. His voice was too familiar. "Levi Ward," he called out. "Come out, and we won't burn the place down." Levi stepped forward, rifle in hand. "You want me? Come take me. But if you hurt anyone else..." The man laughed. "You'll what? You've been running from us for a year." "I'm not running anymore." Another rider cocked his rifle. Maggie stepped beside Levi, shotgun raised. The man in front noticed. "You letting a girl fight your battles now?" "She ain't letting me do anything," Levi said. "She's fighting her own, just like she always has." The man's voice turned sharp. "You killed my brother." "I stopped him," Levi growled, "because no one else would." There was a beat of silence. Then gunfire. It exploded all at once. Sharp cracks splitting the night, bullets splintering porch wood, dirt kicking up. Maggie fired. Levi fired. Her father hit one of the riders square in the chest. A horse screamed. One of the attackers broke off, circling to the barn. Levi followed, ducking behind a trough, reloading. Maggie saw 2 more rush toward the cabin. She dropped one with a shot to the leg. The other fired blindly and disappeared behind the chicken coop. Then a scream cut through the dark. "Levi!" Maggie turned in time to see Levi fall to one knee, clutching his shoulder. The man in the black hat was advancing, revolver raised. Maggie didn't think. She ran. She fired as she moved, catching the man in the side. He staggered, shot back, missed. Levi rose and, with a cry of pain, swung his rifle like a bat. The stock caught the man under the jaw. He went down hard. Silence. Breathless, aching silence. Then, footsteps. Slow, uneven. Maggie turned and saw her father stepping off the porch, rifle still in hand, face as pale as death. He looked at the bodies, then at Maggie, then at Levi, who was clutching his bleeding arm. "I'm proud of you," her father said quietly. Then he collapsed. Maggie screamed, catching him before he hit the ground. She and Levi dragged him back inside, blood soaking her shirt, her hands. Levi tied off his own arm, then turned his attention to her father, who was barely conscious now. "We need a doctor," Levi said. "Too far," Maggie whispered, holding her father's hand. "Then we do what we can here." They worked through the night. Maggie didn't cry. She pressed every wound, every cloth, her mind locked into survival. Her father drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling names, places, songs from when she was little. At dawn, he opened his eyes. Maggie leaned in, brushing his hair from his face. "I'll be all right," he whispered. "You don't have to lie." He smiled weakly. "I'm not. Not all things heal the way we want. But I saw you tonight. I saw what you've become." She squeezed his hand. "Don't go." "Not yet," he said. "Not yet." Levi stood by the doorway, bandaged, pale but alive. He met her eyes. They didn't need words. Outside, the sun rose slow and steady over the wounded ranch. 3 of the riders lay dead. One had crawled off into the woods. The last was tied in the barn, groaning with a busted jaw. But the land was still theirs. Maggie stepped out onto the porch again, her hands stained, her chest hollow, her heart full. She watched the light creep across the fields, catching the tips of the grass, the edge of the fence. She could feel it now, that turn. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was the beginning of something new, something earned, something that no one would take from her again. The days that followed were quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes from fear or waiting, but the stillness that arrives after a storm has passed. The bodies were buried at the far end of the property, under the tree line, away from the cattle. Maggie marked the graves with stones, not names. She didn't need reminders of who they were, just that they were done, that the chapter had ended. Her father recovered slowly. The bullet hadn't hit anything vital, but the fever came fast and hard. For 2 days, Maggie and Levi barely left his side, trading shifts with cold cloths, broths, and whispered prayers. When the fever broke, he opened his eyes, smiled weakly, and asked for his chair on the porch. "I want to see what's still mine," he said. "I want to see the sky from my own house." Maggie helped him out each morning now, one arm around his waist, Levi trailing close behind with a blanket and rifle. They sat together most afternoons, just watching the land stretch out ahead of them like a second chance. The well got cleared properly, the fence repaired again. The animals calmed. The wind felt softer. The ranch, battered but not broken, began to breathe again. And so did Maggie. One morning, she came in a barn to find Levi mending a broken stirrup. He was humming under his breath, some tune she didn't know, but it stuck in her chest like something warm. She watched him a moment, then stepped forward and took the leather from his hands. "You don't have to fix everything," she said. He smiled. "Guess I don't know what to do with my hands when there's no trouble. There'll always be something that needs tending, but not everything's a fight." He nodded, still learning that. Maggie looked at him for a long time. His face was thinner now, but steadier. The shadows were still there, but softer at the edges. "I've been thinking," she said quietly, "about you staying. For good." Levi set the tools down slowly. "You sure?" "I am. What about everything that happened?" She shrugged. "It happened, and we're still here." He stepped closer, just enough that she could feel the heat of his body. "You still trust me? Even after all of it?" "I trust who you are now, and what you've done for this place. What you've done for me." He looked like he wanted to speak, but couldn't find the words. So instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a hand-carved pendant made from an old bone button and leather string. Simple, worn smooth. He held it out. "I made this when I was 16. Always kept it. Don't know why. Guess I needed to remember who I was before things went bad." She looked at it, then at him. "I want you to have it," he said. "Not as thanks. As a beginning." She took it gently and tied it around her neck, the button resting just below her collarbone. "That's the first time someone's given me something just because," she said. He smiled. "That won't be the last." Later that evening, Maggie brought her father a cup of tea and sat beside him on the porch. The sky was burning orange, clouds rimmed with firelight. "You love him," her father said softly. Maggie didn't answer at first. Then, "I think I always did. Just didn't know it was allowed." Her father gave a quiet chuckle. "You've earned more than just survival, Mags. Let yourself have it." She laid her head gently on his shoulder. "We're going to be all right, aren't we? I believe we will." Inside, Levi played cards with himself by lamplight, the flicker casting gold across his worn hands. Outside, the wind stirred the trees. A calf bleated. Somewhere in the fields, a hawk cried out. And for the first time in years, Maggie looked toward the future without dread. The past hadn't vanished. The pain was still there, but it no longer owned her. The land was scarred, but it was still beautiful. So were they.